Hello, my name is Melinda Higgins. This is my audition video for DataCamp. This video could be part of an introductory course on R Markdown to create documents. Specifically, this video lesson will introduce the R environment and related considerations when compiling R Markdown documents. The goal of the lesson is to help the viewer understand the difference between the global environment outside of an R Markdown document and the local environment inside of an R Markdown document. This instruction should help the viewer avoid the common mistakes made when first learning R Markdown, namely, not loading R packages that they need and not creating the objects expected from their embedded R code. At the end of the lesson, the viewer will understand how loading packages and datasets changes the R environment both globally and locally. They will learn how to create and add new objects to their environment, and they will see how these changes must be considered both outside and inside of an R Markdown document. This lesson assumes that the viewer has a basic familiarity with R and RStudio, that they know how to install and load packages, and that they know how to create basic objects using R. The example worked in this lesson also assumes that the viewer has already installed the R packages of 538, dplyr, and ggplot2. Let's begin. During this lesson, we will be using the R code shown here to complete the following. We're going to load two R packages, dplyr and ggplot2. So if you don't currently have these installed, take a moment now and install them. Next, we're going to load the stake survey dataset from the 538 package. This package also needs to be installed for you to have access to this dataset. Then we're going to create a subset of the stake survey dataset called SStat, and we'll use this subset to create a bar graph. We're going to run this code first interactively so you can see the changes that happen within the current R session and global environment. And then we're going to embed this code within an R Markdown document. When the document's compiled, you will see how another local environment is created, which is important to understand when creating R Markdown documents. When you open RStudio and begin a new project in a new session, notice that the global environment is empty. We can see that the global environment is empty by clicking on the Environment tab in the top right window. We can also confirm that the environment is empty by typing the list command in the console window. Notice that character 0 is returned, indicating that there are currently no objects in the R global environment. It should also be noted that when RStudio begins with a new R session, only the base packages that come with R are currently loaded. We can see which packages are available by typing session info in the console. Specifically notice the list of attached base packages and the list of packages loaded via namespace. The functions and datasets associated with the packages listed here are the only ones currently available to this R session. If the package is not listed here, you must first load it into the R session using the library function. Let's take a look at what happens to our current R session when we load the dplyr and ggplot2 packages using the library function. Run these two lines of code to load the dplyr and ggplot2 packages. Then run session info again to see the changes to your R session. Not only are the dplyr and ggplot2 packages listed in the other attached packages, but you'll also notice there are many more packages listed as loaded via namespace. So you can now see that loading packages changes what's available to the current R session. Let's next use the data function to load the stake survey dataset from the installed 538 package into the R global environment. After running this code, notice that the Environment tab shows that the stake survey dataset is now available in the global environment. You can also see that the stake survey dataset is available by typing the list command in the console. You can now see that there is one object in the R global environment. Next, let's use the filter and pipe functions from the dplyr package to select only the stake surveys for the respondents from the mountain region of the United States. The NA-omit function is also added here to remove the NAs or missing responses to clean up the bar plot that we will make next. After running these lines of code, we create a new object called SStat that's also now shown in the global environment, either here in the Environment tab or resulting from the list command in the console window. Finally, run the ggplot code to create a bar plot of the stake preferences for the respondents from the mountain region. To summarize, so far we've changed the current R session by loading 2 R packages, and we've added 2 dataset objects to our global environment. The order in which we did each of these is important. Suppose we remove the stat object from our global environment. We can do this by using the rm command here in the console window, followed by the object that we want to remove, stat. You'll notice that this object is no longer shown in the global environment window. Now, try running the ggplot code again. This time, we get an error in the console window stating that the object stat is not found. Similarly, what if the packages were not currently loaded in our R session? Let's remove the packages and see what happens. In RStudio, we can restart our R session by clicking on the Session menu, click Restart R. We can confirm that the packages are no longer available by typing session info again in the console window. Notice that dplyr and ggplot2 are no longer listed here. Let's also see what happens if we try to run the code to create the stat data subset. Notice that we get errors that the pipe function was not found. This is because the dplyr package is no longer loaded. The point of this exercise is to illustrate the kinds of errors that are generated when either the R packages or the objects that are needed by your code are missing. Not only is this helpful when working interactively in your global environment, but these are especially important when creating new R Markdown documents. When an R Markdown document is compiled, it creates its own R session and a new local environment, specifically for that document. To see how this works, let's create a new R Markdown document by going to File, New File, R Markdown, choose Document HTML as the format, and type in a title and your name. For this exercise, let's delete everything after the first R code chunk. In this first R code chunk, after the knitter line of code, put in the R code to load the stake survey dataset and create the stat data subset. When we compile this document by clicking knit to HTML, we get an error in the R Markdown window stating that the pipe command could not be found. This is because we need to load the dplyr package using the library function within the R Markdown document. Add the code to load the dplyr package and reknit the document to confirm that the error is now fixed. Next, let's add a section to the R Markdown document for the bar plot. Add a level 2 header for stake preferences in the mountain region, followed by an R code chunk for the ggplot code that we ran earlier. This time, when we reknit the document, we should get another error. This is because we've not loaded the ggplot2 package in our document, even though it is loaded in the current R global session. Indeed, we did get an error that the function ggplot could not be found. So let's add the code to load the ggplot2 package in this R code chunk. Now the document should reknit without errors. Let's make one more change. Go back to the first R code chunk and comment out the lines of code that create the stat data subset. Then reknit the document to see what kind of error is produced. This time, when the ggplot code tries to execute, we get an error stating that the stat data object is not found. Thus, you can now see it is important when creating R Markdown documents to be sure that all of the R packages that your document needs are loaded within this document, and that any objects that are needed are also created within the document, regardless of what is loaded in your current global R environment. This is because when a new R document is compiled, a new R session is created with an empty environment. This can be confusing when first trying to learn R Markdown, especially if you're working interactively between your global environment and the code embedded within your R Markdown document. I hope this exercise helps you diagnose and minimize these types of errors as you go forward to use R Markdown in the future.